Greetings and welcome to the Halloween edition of the Sliders Review. And I'm here today to talk to you about Van Helsing Season 2. So I talked about Season 1 about, a year ago, I think. You can watch all 5 seasons on Netflix, but, Season 1 and now Season 2 are available on Tubi. And this is a vampire apocalypse show that aired on Sci-Fi. If you ever watch it on Netflix, they keep saying Netflix original. It's not a Netflix original. It's a Sci-Fi Canadian show. And so, basically, this show takes place during a vampire apocalypse. And vampires have been roaming the world for, centuries. And in the 1900s, they was around mostly in the shadows. But then at some point in time, I forget what this event was called, the uprising, that's it. Where the vampires all like, you know what, let's start biting some of these scientists and getting some of these human scientists to do what we want, and let's blacken the sun. So they created some type of fog screen that blocks out the sun, and now they roam around during the day, and it's during the uprisings when they took over. And so I told you last year that this is basically The Walking Dead but with vampires. And I mean, it's mostly identical to that of The Walking Dead, because we deal with a group of survivors and they all can't get along with each other and they're roaming around together, and some of their personalities are just slightly similar to The Walking Dead, but you can tell who's who from what show they're trying to take from and stuff like that. And, like I said before, Season 1 was actually pretty cool and everything. When they had it more on the scientific route and stuff. We altered this one woman. She's the only hope for humanity. And if she bites a vampire or if they bite her, then that vampire turns human. And there are different types of vampires. There are daywalkers, there are regular vampires, there are feral vampires, so it was a really fascinating universe they created. Until they get to Season 2. Somebody decided that, hey, maybe we shouldn't be too much like The Walking Dead. Maybe we should start throwing in some supernatural stuff. See, this version of Van Helsing deals with Vanessa Van Helsing. And this show is actually based on a comic book. But the show looks nothing like the comic book. The character doesn't dress like the comic book character. But it's based on the comic book character and stuff. And so, like I said before, they tried to make this whole Walking Dead type thing. But then by Season 2, they're all like, hey, let's go the supernatural route. Let's be a little bit like Buffy and a little bit like Blade. So now you got kind of this supernatural mixed in with the scientific. And it gets very confusing. Let's just put it like that. Especially when you go throughout the entirety of the series, it gets even more confusing and even more complicated and stuff. And I kind of wish they would have left all the well alone and just kept it the scientific route and having them roam around the world and try to take out vampires that way. Added in the supernatural thing is fine if it would have started out that way. And when it comes to that Season 2, they decided, hey, let's expand the mythology of this show and create a lore and all this other stuff. Fine, that's totally great. That's what you're supposed to do. But their too scientific and supernatural stuff just isn't working out. Plus, when you figure out how Vanessa got her powers, it's explained in Season 2 how she got her powers, right? Or her abilities, I should say. But you know how all TV shows are. When they create a season, they focus on that season. And they don't really think about the next season until they have to get greenlit and stuff like that. But sometimes they come up with it while they're creating the current season they're doing. So I don't believe they try to go as far as they did in like seasons 3 through 5, because it's just so completely different from that of season 1 and 2. And so when they explain how Vanessa got her powers in season 2, there is some slight retconning in seasons 3, 4, and 5. And it gets so convoluted that it makes your head spin. And it's just kind of like, well, how the heck did she get her powers and stuff? And like her ancestors and all this other crap. And it just gets a little too confusing. Another thing they did this season, they decided, hey, let's see how dumb the audience is, and let's insert a new character who has technically been there forever and ever, but we've never seen this person. And that person is Scarlet. And who is Scarlet? Scarlet is Vanessa's twin sister. A twin sister she don't even remember. And I'm just kind of like, I know y'all just didn't insert a new character and try to tie her into the main character so that y'all can build more on y'all mythology and lore and everything. And that's exactly what they did. And what don't make no sense is that they knew here's the weird thing. All throughout season 1, Vanessa doesn't even mention the twin sister or anything like that because she don't remember. But then as soon as she meets her twin sister, she's like, who are you? And they're like, I don't know you. And then they start mentioning names and this and that. They're like, hold up, how you know this name? And how you know about this facility known as the farm? And I remember being here. And oh my God, all my memories are coming back all of a sudden. Yeah, that's how they do it. All of a sudden, all the memories just start flooding back as soon as they're in a familiar place and they look at each other. And then all of a sudden, they could remember each other, not as babies, but little 4-year-old girls. And okay, I can kind of give it to them. When you're 4 years old, you don't remember nothing. Or at least when you're older, you don't remember nothing when you're 4 years old. I know I don't. But it's just kind of weird because as soon as they start to remember each other, they remember everything that happened with them being 4 years old. So it's just kind of like sloppy writing and everything. And it's like the whole twin sister thing could have been cooler if they would have just mentioned it in season 1. Or found a better way to explain it or something like that. Not just, oh, I forgot all about you, but then all of a sudden we're in this room that we was in together and oh, hey, look, all of a sudden I remember you now. And all of a sudden I remember mom. And all of a sudden I remember this mysterious key. And this mysterious key looked very supernatural looking and everything. And it's just, it's just one of those things, And what's weirder is that when they were growing up, they looked like identical twins, but as they got older, they're fraternal. What the? You couldn't find nobody that looks like the actress. Now, Kelly Overton looks very similar to the actress who played Lori from The Walking Dead. Just cast her. Even though she's a little bit older, I don't care. They look similar. And they're friends, I think. I know Kelly's friends with somebody really close. I think it is the lady from The Walking Dead. But the actress they got to play Scarlet doesn't look anything like Kelly. But Scarlet is a really cool character, so at least we got that going for us, right? Now, this season, sadly, is when they started to show fractures in the writing. Tiny little cracks here and there. And those tiny little cracks will continue into season 3, but it's still season 2 and season 3 are pretty good. It's just little cracks here and there. However, when you get into that of season 4 and then in season 5, it's like colossal, like earthquake, like cracks in like the infrastructure and everything. Season 4 was the beginning of the end of the show just sucking. And I'll explain a little bit more as to why that happened at the end of this video. I'll tell you when I'm about to spoil season, like later on and stuff like that, and what happened to certain characters. It's gonna be a while before I can review those seasons because they're not free on Tubi, and I don't do Netflix no more. And I don't know why Tubi's taking so long to upload every season. Like, just put the whole thing out at once. Y'all do that with every other season. Every other series and stuff. Now, season 2, like I said before, was the beginning of the fractures in the infrastructure. Cracks in the writing, cracks in the acting, character development, stuff like that. As you will go on, you will realize a lot of crap just don't make no sense. And you really have to either rewatch it or go online to figure out why certain people are the way they are, because it just gets super convoluted and stuff like that. And yeah, so like season 2, it's not terrible. That's the thing. Like, it's not terrible. It's good, but it's a little sloppy. The first couple of episodes are probably the most frustrating in terms of writing, because it's just kind of all over the place. Once you get around episode 5 or 6, it gets a bit better. But only a bit better. But like I said before, the story is just literally all over the place, because they introduce these elder vampires and everything. And I'm just like, oh, okay, we got that supernatural crap coming on. But the whole elder vampire thing could have just been explained by, oh, they're just the oldest versions and this and that. But nah, they got superpowers. This show also introduces one of the coolest elements of the show, and that is the Sisterhood. The Sisterhood is an ancient order of vampires that are all female, and they're basically elite fighters and stuff. They have a cool look to them. They wear these really scary masks, but this is what weird. They take off the mask, they're wearing war paint, and their war paint is just flat out scary. It's scarier than the mask. I don't know why they wear both. This is where we get the character of Ivory, which I've mentioned her in one video I did a while back and stuff. And, they actually do some pretty interesting character development with some of their characters. And some characters I wasn't even expecting them to do character development with, like Scab, the guy who screams a lot in everything. I was really shocked that they tried to make him more of a main character this season, and actually showed a flashback of what he was like before he got turned into a vampire. Now, one frustrating thing with this season is, just like with The Walking Dead in season 4, they decide to separate the group. And in fact, the group will be completely separated all throughout this season. Smaller fractions in the survivor group will come together to interact with each other, but then they separate again. Then they come back together, only separate again. And then there are some characters who, they take Vanessa, she's the main character, right? You got some people, like Flesh, who haven't seen Vanessa since season 1. Because Flesh is just doing his own thing. And that's the problem. Everybody has their own story arc and their own little journey or whatever. And so they don't tell everybody's story as properly as they need to. There are some characters that barely appear in this show, and they're supposed to be very, very important, like the villains. But when the villains barely pop up, it's like, what the heck, man? Not only that, but they try to clean up the first season very quickly by getting rid of 2 characters from, 3 characters actually, from season 1 that was just guest appearing and recurring. And it's just kind of like, why do that? You could have got so much gravitas out of their storylines going forward, but no, they just kill them off like The Walking Dead. And I hate when this show tries to be like The Walking Dead. Let The Walking Dead be The Walking Dead. And that's part of the reason with The Walking Dead, that they are The Walking Dead and they make their mistakes. Don't make the same mistakes as they do. So when you look at this season, the first thing you gotta ask yourself is, who exactly is the main villain? It's the vampires and stuff, but who exactly? Because you got Sam from season 1, who's a vampire. You got Dimitri, you got Julius, you have Dimitri's sister and everything. But these characters, like I said, barely appear. And so it's just kind of like, well, who exactly is the main villain of the whole thing, And they're trying to be very ambitious, which I applaud them, but you know what? It's like sometimes you can't be that ambitious, because you got to tell a very coherent story. And when you start slipping up here and there, then you're not telling a very good story. Also, this season does something that completely pissed me off. I'm all like, that was the whole motivation for the main character in season one. In season one, and like it reminds me of a show. What was this show called? I think it was called Revolution. It was an NBC show where all the power got turned off in the world, and you had these group of survivors. And there's this one character who we keep seeing all throughout like season one, right? And the whole motivation is to find this character. So they find this character halfway into the mid-season finale, and then once the rest of the season, the second half of the season premieres, they just get rid of that character. And I'm just kind of like, well, what's the point of watching this show now? Because the whole motivation of the show was to find this person, and boom, you got rid of this person. And they do that here. But there's probably a logical reason why they do that here. And I'll just hurry and get into this character right now. Dylan, the daughter of Vanessa Van Helsing. Vanessa Van Helsing. Two Vans in the same name. Anyway. Dylan was the main motivation as to why, Vanessa did what she did. She didn't really want to stay part of the group. She kept leaving the group to try to find her daughter. That was the only thing she wanted to do. She didn't care about saving the world. She didn't care about killing vampires. She just wanted to find her daughter and make sure her daughter is safe. And so we find out at the end of season one when Vanessa infiltrates, Dimitri's hideout with Muhammad, that, not only is Dylan alive, but she's been turned into a vampire. Dylan will become the most complicated and plot hole character in the entire series because, like I said before, they probably only planned out season two when they was writing it and didn't really think about the other seasons. Now, I will get into why she's the biggest plot hole in terms of one reason towards the very end of this video, because if I spoil it now, it will just spoil stuff for a lineage of at least 3 or 4 different characters. And so, well, actually a little bit more than that. But anyway, so she is a huge plot hole and everything. And so, Vanessa gets captured and stuff, and Muhammad's with his sister. Eventually, Muhammad does help Vanessa escape, which she has resentment towards Muhammad when she finds out he betrayed her and stuff. And so, at this point in time, the resistance is busting through. And they're trying to kill as many vampires as possible. As for Vanessa, she's just trying to get to Dylan. But Dylan doesn't want nothing to do with her because Dylan is a vampire and hates her guts and stuff. And so remember, that one doctor, he was experimenting on vampires and stuff. And so eventually Vanessa is able to calm her daughter down and get her. And her and Muhammad are able to escape, as Vanessa kills that doctor who experimented on Dylan. And so now that they're out and about and everything, what's her name? Dylan is kind of acting funny and weird, and she's hungry. She's basically dying because she doesn't have any blood to drink and stuff like that. And so, as eventually Muhammad leaves the group because he wants to, because there's a bunch of vampires nearby, and he's trying to get them away from Dylan and Vanessa and stuff like that. And so eventually Vanessa ends up turning another vampire into human, and that human tags along for the remainder of the series, right? And so at some point in time, Vanessa bites Dylan to turn her back human. And after that, they're happy. They're playing in the field and everything. It's a joyous time. You're happy for her. You're rooting for them because this has been the motivation of Vanessa the entire time, right? But then the unthinkable happens. When the sunlight comes out, everything's all peachy keen until Dylan's skin starts to burn. And burn it does until where she turns into ash very quickly in Vanessa's arms. This devastates Vanessa and it pissed me off. This reminds me of that little girl that went missing in season 2 of The Walking Dead and eventually was found turned into a zombie. And so, like, because of this, Vanessa just goes crazy and just goes on a bloodlust, killing as many vampires as possible. Now, here is one confusing thing. How exactly did she die? Well, like I said before, that doctor experimented on her and everything. And so when he changed her genetics around, because he was trying to get vampires that can survive the sunlight, but somehow he didn't take into account of Vanessa's superpowers and stuff and her DNA. So Dylan is now dead. And it's really sad. It's really tragic. She'll be shown in flashbacks or like not flashback, but hallucinations in other seasons and stuff like that. And it's weird because when we get into the 5th season, she's much older now. So it's kind of like, wow, Vanessa hallucinated her older daughter. Now, like I said before, she is a major plot hole. And I'll get into that towards the end of the season. Not season, crap. The end of this video. Like, getting rid of Dylan was stupid, and not giving Dylan superpowers is even dumber. Now, one reason why they probably got rid of Dylan is because she was a kid or a teenager. So, there are labor laws on Hollywood about, like, young people acting. They can only work a certain amount of time, a certain amount of hours in the day, can't work at night, and they have to go to school. So they probably thought, okay, it'd just be best to get rid of this character. It's kind of the same thing with Callie. Callie will pop in other seasons, but she's never a main character and never really recurring. She's more like a guest star. And because she was like really young when she did the show. Dimitri's sister, I forget her name, don't get attached because she literally dies in the 1st episode. A waste of a character that was very interesting in season 1. And, because she was planning a coup and she's sinister and all this other stuff. But Vanessa is pretty pissed off at her for turning her daughter into a vampire. And you don't piss Vanessa off. And just like that, Vanessa ended her life. And that's the end of this character. And it really pisses me off because they could have got some mileage out of this character. But she be gone. And not only is she gone, but her little friend, Muhammad's sister, is gone as well. Yes, what was the point? You could have got more mileage out of this as well. Her and Muhammad could have had more chemistry together and a falling out because, she betrayed, Muhammad betrayed Vanessa and everything for his sister. And his sister only did it so she can get in good with the vampires. And when there was like a little collapse of a building, it fell on top of her and she dies. Waste of characters. Julius is the vampire from season 1 who has his own gang of vampires. And, he also serves Dimitri and stuff like that. And he's been looking for Vanessa since season 1. And he's accompanied by that of his mother in season 1, if you remember. Now, we'll find out more about him later on. Why? Because Vanessa bites the crap out of him and he turns human. And once he turns human, he's like the nicest guy in the world. Most people are when they turn back because they were never evil to begin with. And so, he tags along with Vanessa. But she doesn't want that because she doesn't want nothing to do with him because she's pissed about, the whole Dylan thing. He was there when Dylan died and everything because originally she tried to drink Julius's blood, but she didn't like his blood because Vanessa tainted his blood with the bite. See, like I said before, if Vanessa bites a vampire, they turn human, but something happens to their blood where it tastes really nasty to vampires and they don't want to drink from those people and stuff. And so so she couldn't feed off him, so she tried to feed off Vanessa. So that's why Vanessa bit her and stuff. He is a crucial part of this group. He's like the muscle and everything, and he wants to kill Sam because Sam murdered his mother and everything. We find out from him that he's all the way, he's been around since like the 1930s and stuff. Because just like with every good apocalypse, there are cannibals and everything. But these are some of the most wackadoo cannibals I've ever seen. And this is when the story writing doesn't, like, and the acting just isn't all that sharp. So basically, him and the rest of the survivor groups, because they split up from Vanessa because she gets taken and stuff like that, right? And so they meet these cops as they're driving down the road. And what's interesting, he stole the car from Flesh. So Flesh could have met up with them, but circumstances and stuff. So they get pulled over by these like sheriff deputies. And the sheriff deputies are like, look, man, we can barbecue for y'all, some good eating and stuff like that. When they get to the sheriff deputy place, there's a bunch of cops there. And one big lady who's a cook who they call Mama. And so the cops are pretty nice and everything, but they won't let the people have weapons in their place, and they have like a stockpile full of weapons. And they literally tell the surviving group that, look, y'all can like spend the night, get a shower, get a change of clothes, get some eats, but you can't have none of our weapons, and you're leaving by tomorrow. And so eventually it is revealed that these cops are cannibals. Who do they eat? Humans? No. They eat vampires and stuff. They're like, we ain't never had vampire meat. It tastes like chicken. And so everybody's kind of grossed out by this. Now they're able to barbecue because they turned the UV lights into like a steamer and stuff. And so when Julius finds this out, he is pissed. He hates vampires, but he still has that connection to them where he feels sorry for them because, he got turned into a vampire. So he ends up killing Mama. So when the cops find out, they literally want to kill them. But when they find out some of the people used to be former vampires, they're going to start doing the Salem witch trials. They're like, hey, look, we're going to hang you. And if you survive the hanging, that means you're a vampire and we're going to kill you. But if you die from the hanging, you're going to be human. And, well, at least you go off to heaven and everything. But they get interrupted by the sisterhood. And they kill, like, the cannibals and stuff. But other than that, like I said before, Julius is like, like a really good member of the group because he's really strong and stuff like that. We'll find out more about him as the series progresses and stuff. But he's a pretty cool character, and I am glad they turned him. Flesh and Lucky. Yes, that's her name, Lucky. And if you think she's lucky, just wait till you see what happens. So, like, they are part of the resistance, and they the ones who stormed the place in the end of season 1 and trying to take it over in season 2. And so they get overrun at some point in time, and Flesh is actually separated from the entirety of the group and the entirety of the season, except for that of Muhammad when he finds him. And so him and Lucky, they're basically lovers and stuff, right? And so Lucky's a really nice character, but we don't know nothing about her, period. And other than she's nice and a little bit of paranoid. Actually, you know what? Doc was there at the resistance group originally when Flesh was there, but I don't think they interacted much. And so Lucky will help Flesh do whatever he needs to do. And so when he's out in like the woods and he finds Muhammad, who has been wounded very bad on the stomach, he takes care of Muhammad. For some reason, Lucky doesn't like Muhammad, and I forget why. I think maybe because his blood is attracting vampires or something. But eventually he ends up losing Muhammad. And so Lucky reveals to him, I think I'm pregnant. And he's all like, what? It was only one time. They have a slight argument with their relationship because she tells him that she doesn't know if he really wants to be with her and all this other stuff, and he has no idea what she's been through and all this other stuff. And so they later rekindle and they start holding hands and they be in a relationship. She's very tough and she'll shoot the crap out of you and stuff like that. But sadly, a bunch of feral vampires attack the new resistance for group that they find, because theirs got overrun, but they had no idea. See, they had no idea theirs got overrun because they just been on a mission throughout the entire season. And so Callie, who I'll get into later, tells them that, it got overrun, like a little medical facility they used to be at. And so now they're living at this new place and stuff, right? And so it gets overrun by feral vampires. Those are the vampires who are animalistic and everything. But these feral vampires are weird. There's one known as Scarface, and he will not die for nothing. You can shoot him up, you can burn him, you can electrocute him. He just won't die. And they have no idea why, but this one scientist named Abigail thinks that, he's been altered somehow. And so, Flesh ends up getting attacked by, Scarface and some groups, and Lucky tries to save him, but she ends up getting bit. And she gets bit bad. And you gotta stop and remember she's pregnant. So her baby's gonna get infected with the virus strain. So Lucky tells Flesh to get out of there, and she picks up a grenade and she detonates it, and she just blows up. And one of the worst CGI effects I've ever seen. And I'm like, oh man, she was just starting to be an interesting character, and we don't even know much about her. Plus, it was nice that Flesh had somebody, because remember, he said he murdered his family when he turned into a vampire and stuff. And, it was just really sad to see her go. And she was only introduced in season 2 and left in season 2. And so we don't really know what happens to Flesh after this moment and stuff. But it just sucks because Flesh was always a cool character in season 1. He was very level-headed. He was one of the best actors on the show. And his screen time was very, very, very limited to this season. He'll appear more, spoiler alert, in season 3. But in season 4, he's only in a handful of episodes, and then they write him out. But at least he gets a happy ending, so that's a great thing. I just hate that they wrote him out, because by the time you get to the second episode of season 5, pretty much everybody from season 1 is gone and everything except for Axel. And it really sucks. Scab, he's one of those vampires that work for Dimitri, and he's constantly screaming. The actor's really good. He's really good character actor and stuff. And so basically he's been tasked with finding the sisterhood and everything like that. And so when he finds them, he ends up killing the Oracle. And by doing that, now the sisterhood has to follow his instructions. And so we learn a little something about his backstory when he's in kind of this cave that has mystical powers that make you relive one of your worst moments in your life. And so it's revealed he used to be human working for a factory. The other workers, they went on strike, and he decided to cross the picket line and start working because he needed the money. As a result, they started bullying him. And that's all we know about him. They try to make him sympathetic, but the dude's evil. You know what I'm saying? The sisterhood is led by Ivory, who's one of their main warriors and stuff. And like I said before, they're an elite fighting group of women vampires who wear face paint and wear these long black dresses and wear these masks. They're very intimidating and they're very cool looking. And so they are skilled elite fighters and stuff. And Scab now controls them, and they work for Dimitri. Basically, they're there to look for the key so that Dimitri can unwake the elder that turned him into a vampire. And so, we learn from Ivory when she's in that cave that she was being burnt at the stake by a bunch of Christian monks. Why? Because she is indigenous, and they didn't want her, they wanted her to convert to Christianity, but she refused. And so they burnt her. Eventually she got bit by a vampire and turned into that of the sisterhood. Spoiler alert, in the much, much, much later seasons, around about, season 4 or so, she gets bit and she becomes part of the survival group and she becomes an ally and everything. So Callie reappears and everything. She's the little girl from that one survival group that tried to take over Vanessa and Axel's survival group's hideout and everything. And so she appears in season 2. She's part of Lucky's survival group and everything. And I think Lucky's people were like putting up these red balloons in the sky with a map to find a place that they could have sanctuary or something like that. And so Callie starts disappearing. Why? Because she met a vampire in the woods. And he did not bite her and he became her friend. And guess who that vampire was? Well, I'll explain a little bit later. But anyway, she disappears for the rest of the season only to reappear. And when she reappears, she starts playing around with the radio and gets it working. And she contacts somebody on the radio. This pisses the group off because now she led them to her location. And this reminds me of something of The Walking Dead, the video game, the Telltale games and stuff. When Clementine contacted somebody on the radio and it was big trouble after that. They love stealing from The Walking Dead. Doc is probably one of the worst characters in this series that people just flat out hate. They hate her more than the vampires. They hate her because in season 1 she was a straight up coward. And she let Axel get bit by that vampire back at the farm. And so also when she turned back into human, she tried to betray her group and have a vampire turn her back, but couldn't because she has the Van Helsing blood antidote in her veins when Vanessa bit her. And so a lot of people just don't like this character. And for good reason. But she's one of the leading scientists trying to figure out this whole vampire thing. And so she's with Lucky's group and she meets a woman, I think named Jules or Julia or something like that. This is the first indication we get that Doc is a lesbian and everything. But it's not 100% confirmed. It's just hinted at, but you do get the hints very strong. And yes, she is a lesbian. And so to this woman, she reveals her name to her, which I forget what it is. And so she's riddled with guilt because she feels bad about what she did to Axel and also feels bad about trying to betray the rest of the group. Now, when she meets with Callie and everything, she meets the vampire that Callie has befriended. And as a result, she steals blood bags from the facility she's at to give to this vampire, which she gets caught and they want her gone and everything. But she tries to explain to Julia that she has to do this to make up for her past sins and everything. And so that vampire is Axel. He is a vampire. He got bit because we saw him at the end of the first season getting bit. Oh, we see him come out the farm as a vampire. Now, Axel is... I don't understand his vampirism. I could have sworn he got bit by a feral vampire in season 1. But apparently he must not because he's able to speak. What's odd about him being a vampire is that his voice has changed, which is weird because nobody else's voice changed when they get by a vampire. This is mostly because the actor just wanted to change it up for character-wise and stuff like that. But Axel is interesting. Even though he's turned into a vampire, he is resisting the vampire strain. He doesn't want to bite a human, so he goes days without sucking blood from anybody, and that's why Doc has to get him bags of blood. And not only that, but he's on a mission to find Vanessa so she can turn him back. So him and Doc go on this mission to do that, and Doc is literally taking care of him. But sometimes he has to feed off Doc, and it's disgusting because her blood is tainted by that of Vanessa. I don't know how he's able to resist being evil as a vampire because nobody else in this entirety of the series can. But yet when he gets bit, he's still his nice self, but it's really hard for him to resist it. His willpower is insane, but he is literally the only person who does it, and I don't like that and stuff. And so eventually he does find Vanessa, but she refuses to bite him because of what happened to Dylan. Eventually she does, and he's fine at first until he dies. Everybody's upset and they bury him. Well, at least Julius and Doc buries him. And Doc is very frantic when she buries him because she just feels so guilty. And so when they're driving off, all of a sudden, Vanessa, she's really upset when he dies. It is indicated that Vanessa has feelings for Axel and stuff. But they never really went after each other. But she's able to hear his heartbeat in the ground and they dig him back up. And so he jokes around, all like, I gave you 3 months and you just gave me 3 minutes. And so eventually, the group goes off until Vanessa is kidnapped by some type of government type people. After that, he hangs out with Doc, Julius, and Scarlet and everything. But he gets pissed at Doc when Julius, who has the key, is missing because Dimitri has him. And he thought Doc just let him die and everything. But it turned out she didn't. So he is the one at the new facility with Lucky, Flesh, and Callie and stuff. And remember, Callie's the one who alerted some people about their location. Sam is literally the best freaking character in the entirety of the show and the best actor at that. And I still think this man needs to play the Joker. He's always played pale face, white face like people, and he would be a perfect Joker. He was in The Haunting Hour, he was in Chapel Wait, and he's in this show. And Chapel Wait was another vampire show. He played a vampire. And so this dude is a deranged killer when he was human, but he's even worse now that he's a vampire. And the dude is so smart from season 1 and even smarter in season 2. And so he's just going around biting people, this and that. But he misses Muhammad. Muhammad was his best friend. So he decides to have a Muhammad wannabe and everything. He ends up going to this high school where there's a bunch of delinquent people there. And there he meets a character named Felix, who happens to be black. So he's happy about that. And he kidnaps Felix. And see, Felix was being bullied by the other class and stuff like that. And so he just tortures Felix after a while when Felix refuses to be the new Muhammad and everything. But Felix decides, you know what, I'm going to get back at the bullies and everything and have Sam eat them. But he tricks Sam and tries to free all the other students and stuff. So this pisses off Sam, and I kid you not, and they show it. He cuts out Felix's tongue. Yes. And they show it too. It is disgusting and it is gross. Now this season is very shy on blood. The first season, there was blood everywhere. And in the first episode, there was a lot of blood. But then after that, blood kind of just disappears and it kind of comes back towards the end. But then it kind of disappears again. I guess they got in trouble for having too much blood in season 1. And so Felix, spoiler alert, will show up in season 3. And it's a little confusing, but whatever. But Sam, we actually find out some of his backstory. See, eventually Vanessa's with the group and they're supposed to rendezvous with the high school students. This little resistance type group that's in the forest. And so when they're not able to make the drops on supplies and stuff, Vanessa goes and investigates and she finds Sam. Vanessa can defeat any vampire, but she has the hardest time fighting Sam for some bizarre reason. And so he escapes. And when he escapes, eventually he finds that of Muhammad with Flesh and Lucky and steals that of Muhammad. And so, like I said before, we get to learn some backstory with Sam. We find out how he went deaf. Yes, that wasn't a ruse. Basically, his father is a pastor and used to beat the crap out of him. And one day he like stabbed his father in like the eye or something like that out of revenge when he was a little boy. And his father took both his hands and clapped his ears, making him go deaf. And so like, now this is where the story starts to get a little bit plot armorish. So Muhammad is wounded very badly. So what does Sam do? He collects a couple of humans as food, but he finds a woman. And he forces this woman to fix up Muhammad and everything. Like patch him up and stuff like that. But eventually, you know, he's going to eat this woman and everything. But Muhammad tells him, like, please don't do it, stuff like that. So he lets the woman go, only to lie and hunt her down. And so when we learn more about his backstory and with Muhammad and stuff, Muhammad found him because he was scavenging through a car and a vampire came up behind him, so he was going to save him, but Sam was ready for the vampire. And he realizes that Sam is deaf. When he sees Sam at like a school and everything, like, you know, about to hang himself, and he goes in there to save like Sam. Sam reveals to him that, hey man, I tricked you and everything. I pretended to let that vampire come and get me. I knew he was there the whole time. And I hung myself knowing you was watching so that you could rescue me and everything. And so it's a little bit too like plot armorish and stuff. All that just conveniently happened. And so, because, you know, like I said before, Sam is very smart. Remember how he used to chop off people's fingers and crap like that. But here's more plot armor. The place he held Muhammad at is his dad's old church. And guess who is there? His old dad, who has survived not only old age, but the vampire apocalypse. And he ends up killing his father. How the heck did he find this man after all these years? Anyways, Muhammad is pissed at him and Muhammad stabs himself or something like that. So that, like, you know, Sam won't get some type of satisfaction of torturing him or something like that. This devastates Sam and he bites Muhammad. Now, what's confusing is that Muhammad told him earlier, look, man, you can't turn me because Vanessa already bit me back in episode 1. So you would think that since her antidote cure thing is inside Muhammad, he should never turn into a vampire. But he does and everything at the end of the season. And it's not explained how. So I guess her cure only works on humans that were turned into vampires, not humans that are human and stuff. So I'm going to get into Vanessa first before I get into a couple of these other characters. So Vanessa, like I said before, like she's a really interesting protagonist. She has these special abilities and like, you know, she could care less about saving the world. She's just more about getting her daughter, which she does. And then her daughter ends up turning to a vampire only to die after she bit her. And so because of this, she is enraged and she just starts killing as many vampires as possible with that of Julius. And like she just doesn't care and doesn't want to stop until she sees people are being hurt. So she decides to calm her behind down and help people out. And one thing that's interesting about her this season is she's very bloodthirsty this season. And so like she's just erratic and angry and like almost like a vampire. And she realizes that if she bites like a person and drinks their blood, she gets rejuvenated and energized and even stronger. So she just starts biting people at random whenever she wants a pick-me-up and everything, like Muhammad and her sister. And so like when she finds her sister and everything, like I said before, it's kind of weird because she didn't remember her in the past, but now she does. They remember being in the farm and there's a special key in the wall. And so this key is supposed to unlock an elder, one of the first vampires ever and evil and stuff, right? And so like, after they save Axel, all of a sudden, these helicopters come in, throwing down tear gas, and they only take Vanessa. How did they find her? Heck if I know, it's called plot armor. So when she wakes up, she's in a facility and she's trying to fight her way through, only to realize she's up in the Alps and everything, in the snowy mountains. She is unable to escape. So while she's there, she's reading a book that happens to be a journal of like one of the head doctors there, and she realizes there's a woman initials there. And this old lady says that she's Vanessa's mom. So they start talking this and that. After being there for a while, she sees that they're experimenting on vampires. And one man wanted to be a vampire so they can experiment to get some kind of cure. Eventually, Vanessa finds out these people are all evil and that's not really her mom. And so what exactly are they trying to cook up? We won't find out until the next season, but they are pure evil and everything. And so when Vanessa tries to escape, like the woman pretending to be her mom shoots her 3 times, twice in the chest and I think 1 time in the face. But of course, she has the ability to rejuvenate and everything. And, you know, even though she's in this season, she's kind of barely in it. There's a couple episodes where she's not. And ooh, it really pisses me off what happened to her character in later seasons and stuff. But like I said before, I'll get into that a little bit later. Now let me get into 3 other characters before I can get into the future of the series. Abigail Van Helsing. She is the biological mother of that of Vanessa and that of Scarlett. And so she goes the entire season without seeing Vanessa, but she ends up interacting with Scarlett. Basically, she's known as the boss, and she's there when Axel and them go to this different resistance group and stuff. And when she starts talking with Doc and everything, that's when they find out that Scarface, that one feral vampire, is unable to die. And so, like, when she figures out who Scarlett is and stuff, and learns about the key, she takes Scarlett and they go on a trip up to the mountains where the elder crypt is at. And she starts telling them about like what happened and how they have their abilities. Basically, this one scientist doctor was experimenting on like vampire blood and stuff like that. For whatever reason, she drank the concoction and didn't realize she was pregnant. And so that is how Vanessa and Scarlett have these special abilities and stuff. And so when they was born and they was little girls, they was at the farm, but Dimitri was there and he threatened to harm them. So she took both girls and she gave them to like a friend, separating them from like Dimitri and getting them far away. Well, eventually, the girls got separated from each other, and that's how they didn't know about each other. She's very tough and can kill a vampire. It is shown that I think either her mother or her grandmother was testing her and training her to like be prepared and kill vampires, but it's not exactly entirely sure why. And so like when they're in that little crypt place and stuff like that, in order to open it, you need like the key. And so you also need Van Helsing blood. So all the Van Helsings had to do was stay the heck away from that place, but they're stupid enough to go there. And she knew that, but still went there anyway. And so like she ends up getting wounded and stuff like that. Now, Dimitri is supposed to be our main villain, but he barely appears in the show. After his sister dies, he just wants to awaken the elder. And the elder is revealed to have bitten him and is one of his favorites. And so like he goes on this big mission to like get the key and all this other crap, but barely appearing in the series. When he sees Vanessa and Scarlett, he explains to them how he was there, and he tells them how like you're half vampire and stuff, but Vanessa's more vampire than that of Scarlett. And so like while they're in the little crypt place, when I say he barely appears in this season and barely does anything, I mean he barely does anything. So the elder ends up killing him and stuff like that. And just like that, he is now gone. The big dad from season 1 is now gone. And it's a waste of a character. They could have got so much mileage out of him, but they just squander it. So, Towards probably like, oh, I don't know, episode 2, this masked figure just appeared and killed a vampire. Dressed like a ninja and has a katana and one of those other small daggers that look like a katana. And we don't know who this person is because this person just has a mask. The red paint on the black mask reminds me of the hunters from the Gargoyle series. And so originally, around episode 6, this person finally takes off their mask and it's revealed to be Scarlet. And so Scarlet is the twin sister of Vanessa. And she doesn't have any abilities and everything. So basically, this is what happened. When they was given to that one person, they got separated. Vanessa went into the foster system and she went to get adopted by this other family. This other family knew about the vampires and have been training her to take them out. She had a hard upbringing because, you know, like this one guy in school she liked, didn't like her back because the way she acts, and like, you know, a vampire tried to like, you know, break into like her home and like, you know, kill her and stuff like that. So she's had a really hard upbringing and it's been very confusing. She don't know why she's supposed to kill a vampire, but she just knows she's been trained too. And at one point, she really didn't even start to believe in them at one point until she started to see that one that came to her house. So she's just been on her own mission, killing vampires left and right, but doing it without any powers. And so when she meets Vanessa and all their memories start flooding back, they get attacked by vampires and Vanessa needs a pick-me-up. So she bites the crap out of Scarlet. This somehow activates Scarlet powers. Some of them at least. She has some strength, some speed, super hearing, and she can see at night. But she doesn't have the ability to turn vampires back into human because they never show it. And stuff like that. And so she's a really cool character, a hard nose, a smart mouth and everything. She doesn't take no crap from nobody. And she has a bit of a flirtation towards that of Axel. What's interesting is that there's a scene in season 1 where Vanessa and Axel have to shower in the same place to conserve water. It's where they kind of start their flirtmance and everything. The same thing happens in this season. And so she's a great addition to like the team and she helps out in a way she can. And her only motivation is to kill vampires and keep the key away from that like Dimitri. And so like I told you before, when she meets her mother and everything, she has resentment because she's like, oh, you gave me away and everything. But here's the dumb thing. So, like, remember how I said they need the key to get into the main door of like this like mountain crypt? Well, in order to get to the Elder, they have to use Van Helsing blood to open it up. So that means that Van Helsing just needs to stay the heck away from there. But why would Abigail go there knowing that the blood is supposed to open it? All they had to do was evade the vampires and this and that. But they wanted to kill the Elder. Somehow, the Elder is tailored to that of Van Helsing blood. And has to do whatever they say. So Scarlet tells him, hey, kill Dimitri. So he sticks his fingers through his eyes and rips his flesh completely off his skull. And Dimitri's now dead. Then she orders him to find Vanessa. And the thing is reluctant. He doesn't want to do it because, you know, he hates her and stuff, but he does it anyway. When he finds Vanessa in that facility, she's in a coma and he bites her for some reason. And Vanessa's eyes turn red. And so Scarlet never got to meet Dylan. And it's just kind of odd how they will cram this character in the show and want you to believe that the girls knew each other as little girls, like 4-year-old girls, but then got separated and completely forgot about the other person. It's just very, 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 very odd and stuff. Now, some spoilers into that of the future of the show. So you have been warned. Now, remember how I said Dylan was the biggest plot hole in the entirety of the series? So, in other seasons, it's revealed that, remember, okay, they kind of retcon how they established the powers in season 2 in the Van Helsing twins. And so, like, it's kind of retcon to now say that pretty much every Van Helsing has this like supernatural ability and everything, and they're all vampire hunters from like hundreds and hundreds of years ago, right? And then that kind of gets retcon a little bit more when one vampire tells, like, when Dracula is all like, I helped create y'all, like some of my blood's in y'all, and then the elders like a little bit of me is in you. So we don't know really what the real cause of their powers are. But Van Helsings are just vampire hunters no matter what. And so it's just one retcon after another about how they get their powers and stuff. It's really odd and just doesn't make no sense. So, and that's like I said before, they probably just didn't know, where the show was going to go into, which explains Dylan. They probably had no idea they was going to do all that, because originally they just said that the grandmother, drunk something, and that's what gave the girls their powers. Which, if that is true, why doesn't Dylan have any powers? Why is Dylan able to turn into a vampire? Yeah, the doctor experimented on her, but that's just a cop-out in my opinion. Dylan should have never turned into a vampire, and Dylan should have had superpowers all along. Because it's later retcon that Vanessa has two other daughters who are much older than Dylan. They are about in their 20s, Jack and Violet. One's black and one Hispanic. And the mom is white, and that don't make a lick of sense. And Vanessa had no idea these were her daughters and stuff. And how did they come to be? Well, when Vanessa was like in a coma, actually before she was in a coma, at some point in time, and I don't know when, somebody stole the eggs of Vanessa and put them in two other women, one black, one Hispanic, and fertilized them, thus making Violet and Jack. And they have the vampire abilities, but I think in order for them to get activated, they have to be bit or something like that. And so, yeah, Dylan had half sisters, and they all have the Van Helsing powers and everything. So if they have it, why don't Dylan have it? You know what I'm saying? Now, in season 4, they screw this show up. And I don't blame the actress, because she's allowed to have a baby if she wants. But Kelly, the actress who plays Vanessa, ends up getting pregnant in real life. And instead of incorporating it in the show, similar to how they did Xena and everything when Lucy got pregnant, they decide, hey, let's just write her off halfway into the 4th season. Yeah. So Vanessa disappears halfway into the 4th season and won't reappear until halfway into the 5th. And in fact, she's only in a total of 8 episodes in season 4 and 5, making it only 4 per season. This pissed off the fandom because they're all like, yo, it's her show. It's named after her character. Now, the actress said she wanted to play a gunslinging pregnant mother, but the showrunner would not let her. So she could have returned any time, but they would not let her. And guess who they put in her replacement? Jack and Violet. And fans don't like Jack and Violet. So now they are the two leads and everything, trying to turn vampires back into human and trying to save the world. And that just pissed off the fandom. When Vanessa does come back, she was in some kind of demonic underworld type thing and came back. And she has blonde hair. How did it turn blonde? Don't know. How did she get more superpowers? Hey, we don't know. And it's just kind of odd and convoluted. They also introduced this time travel and everything. They introduced Dracula. They introduced more supernatural stuff. But one of the interesting things is Scarface. Scarface is known as a day walker who can walk around in the day. If he bites you, then you become immortal and can't die. So he bites a couple of the main people in the show. He bites that of Julius. He bites that of Axel. He bites that of Flesh. And so now they can't die and stuff like that. But Muhammad did not get bitten. And Muhammad, well, he ends up dying. They also get rid of Sam, which was the stupidest thing they ever did in season 4, because Sam became an elder. He had these demonic powers and a cool new look with horns, and they just get rid of the dude. And they start getting rid of more people. They write Doc out in the 5th season after just 2 episodes, but she gets a happy ending. They write Flesh out at the halfway into the 4th season, and he's only in 4 episodes in the 4th season, but at least he gets a happy ending. Axel's still there kicking butt. The twins, Violet and Jack are still there kicking butt. Julius is there. There's a bunch of filler episodes, and I mean a lot of filler episodes. They end up killing Scarlet at the end, somewhere in season 3. And it's just kind of like they're killing off good characters and writing off good characters, but leaving us with bad characters and stuff. And the whole Dracula storyline is so confusing. I mean, it's so confusing. So this show went from being really good and it just went really terrible. And once again, I don't blame the actress for getting pregnant, because she's allowed to have a baby and start a family if she wants. But this show should have incorporated her baby into the storyline. All she had to do was just stand around, bite people, and shoot them. She didn't have to fight, you know what I'm saying? I mean, Lucy didn't. And because there's other characters to do that for her and stuff. And the whole Jack and Violet could have been more interesting if it was just written better and if they wasn't forced as like the leads. Because both ladies have a small resume of acting in a show, and it's just kind of like when they became the leads, it just became very uninteresting. And the show just started getting more and more and more confusing as time went on and everything. And it sucks because it started off as a really good show, an alternative to The Walking Dead. But when they went more the supernatural route like Buffy and Blade, they just didn't know what they was doing in terms of writing. That wasn't that spooky. Alright, well, I shall talk to y'all later. Bye.